After owning a senior home care franchise for 10 years and working with seniors at the end of their life, I can tell you firsthand that no one ever said to me, I wish I had worked more, right? They always expressed to me their regrets. I wish I had a better relationship with my spouse. I wish my kids were here caring for me instead of you. I wish I had taken that trip. I wish.
Welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom, where we share pearls of wisdom shared by some of the world's top entrepreneurs, leaders, and difference makers. Here's your host, Govind Jayaraman.
Hi, I'm Govind Jayaraman, and this is Paper Napkin Wisdom, episode 321. Happy to have you here. Today, I want to invite you into a conversation that might just shift the way you look at your business forever. Have you ever had that feeling that what you've been searching for, the growth, the clarity, the breathing room, has actually just been sitting right in front of you the whole time? You're not sure why it felt so hard, but something tells you there's an easier path, but you just haven't seen it yet. Today's guest, Sailynn Doyle, discovered that situation. What I love about Saylynn's story is it doesn't start with a breakthrough. It starts with exhaustion, with doing all the things right and still feeling like the weight kept getting heavier and heavier and heavier. And yet somewhere in the middle of the overwhelm, in the middle of doing something she thought she was supposed to do, she uncovered a pattern that changed everything about how she built her business, her team, and her life. You're going to hear what she saw and perhaps notice something about your own business and life as she shares that quiet shift that tripled her revenue and gave her back her time. And the best part, it's something you already have access to right now. So as you listen, allow yourself to wonder, what if the next level of your business isn't out there somewhere? What if it's been hiding in plain sight, just waiting for you to notice? Let's dive into this conversation. Sailynn Doyle, welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom. I'm excited to have you here today.
Thank you so much. I am so appreciative of this opportunity. I just love the whole concept of this.
That's great. Well, I got to tell you, you went all in on the concept, and we talked about this in the green room. The color of the napkin, the color of the pen, the color of your top, the color of your glasses, and your lipstick is all very on brand. So listen, if you're just listening to this, go get the video because it's going to be worth it today. I have a feeling. So Sailynn, you shared an interesting shaped and napkin with me. You said your revenue is hiding in plain sight. Stop chasing everyone. Go all in on the 80% that actually matter. Why did you share that with me?
So I owned a senior home care franchise in Massachusetts for 10 years. And that was probably the biggest aha moment that I had. It came 5 years in. I wish it had come sooner, but we both know that everything comes when it's meant to come. And that truly changed the way that not only we worked in my business and how I managed, but how we scaled. And it was something that was sitting in plain sight that I think every single entrepreneur probably doesn't realize is there. And once you hear it, you're like, I should have known that.
Yeah. So, what's really interesting about that is it was a franchise business, right?
Correct.
And I think that a lot of us pick, a lot of entrepreneurs pick franchise business because it's a shortcut. You've got a template. You just follow the template. And that wasn't exactly your experience. I mean, sure you did, but still you had to go 5 years of learning first, right?
Exactly.
Did you have that same expectation when you started?
So yeah, I mean, I was 26, 27 when I started, and I chose a franchise because I was looking for that business in a box, right? What did I know about business? And so I bought it and I was very happy about the support and all of that. But what I didn't realize was that I had bought a 40-hour owner operator business model. They wanted me to be in the business, full time working it. And while that sounded okay in the beginning, once I realized that didn't align with what I really wanted for like my dream lifestyle, I really had to start thinking differently. And that's where the paper napkin wisdom really came in. And I learned this from a mentor, and it just truly opened my eyes.
It's really powerful. I want to stick in the 5 years for a second because I think there's a lot of learning there. So 5 years, you bought yourself a job, 40 hours a week, probably more than that, owner operator model. So you bought yourself a job, you were in it for 5 years, and through that time, you probably went through a few cycles of feeling like, hey, this is really great, this is really working. To what's wrong with me, right? Did you have that experience?
Like all day, every day? So to be honest, the first 3 years of business, I worked 80+ hour weeks. And sure, I had the six-figure salary and the $1 million business. But when I should have been celebrating year 3, instead I was sitting in my car 9 a.m. on a weekday, sobbing my eyes out because I had just covered for another staff member who had called out sick. And that was really my, like, draw a line in the sand moment where I said, like, something has to change. I can't keep going at this rate. And that year 3 was so pivotal. And when you look at entrepreneurs and the statistics on how many businesses make it past year 3, I can clearly understand why. Sure, they chalk it up to, finances and all of those things, but I think it ultimately comes down to how much more can I give of myself if I don't find a solution? And so for me, that line in the sand moment at year 3 was where I literally said, okay, how do I do things differently? And I met with a coach. I was completely embarrassed about it because as a woman who's a figure outer, problem solver, I was like, why can't I figure this out on my own? And I put the meeting in my calendar as private so no one could see. And I skulked out the back door to this like shady diner that was dark and dingy. And I met with him and I vomited all of my problems on him. And I was like, okay, tell me what's wrong. And he summed it up into one word, which was systems. My business lacks systems. And I was like, it can't be that simple. But ultimately, he was right. And so I spent those next 2 years from year 3 to year 5 really digging in, rebuilding that foundation. And that is when I then found that answer to the 80%. And that was such a pivotal moment because I had then had a foundation that I could actually use that information, that wisdom that I got from another owner and actually implement it. I think if I had gotten it sooner, I wouldn't have been ready for it.
Yeah, I think that to a certain degree, we have to all have that moment where, which you had, where you had achieved some, you know, KPI success. Hey, I got this $1 million business; it's growing. I'm 3 years in. I've achieved all my goals. And by the way, I'm crying in my car, and that's not the way I believe you envisioned your $1 million moment. And I think that that contrast is something that a lot of entrepreneurs have to feel. Spoiler alert for anybody listening, if you're building a business, you don't actually have to feel it. You can just pick up the tools and use them. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's a wheel right there for you. And that's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah. And, I think there's so many different messages coming at entrepreneurs right now, like hustle harder and, you have to work hard. But, I always give the example that hard work doesn't guarantee success because if it did, then most people would already be successful millionaires, billionaires, trillionaires, right? With the amount of hours we're putting in. But think about the last time you saw like a recipe on Pinterest, right? You see this beautiful dish and so you get the grocery list, you go shopping, you do the planning, you do the prep, you put it all together, you put it in the oven and it comes out and it looks nothing like the picture on Pinterest. And it's not that you didn't work hard, it's that it just didn't go as planned. And so working harder is not going to guarantee your success. And so that's when you have to have the realization of I can either keep trying to work more and figure it out on my own, or like you said, I can use a tool, a mentor, a coach, a guru, whatever it is, in order to get those quicker, better, faster results.
Right. So So you're there 3 years in, you have this hit the wall moment. You go to a dingy diner and meet this person, this coach who asks you, tells you in one word what he thinks is wrong, systems, and that sets you off on a journey that obviously shapes what comes next. And what did you I guess my question is what did you discover hiding in plain sight for you?
Yeah, so during that 2-year journey, there was obviously more crying, but what I really realized was I had surface level success. So, for instance, he said I needed systems, and I just thought that sounded so simple. I was like, how can that be the answer? But it really, I had a staff member come into my office and I had an open door policy, but it was more like a revolving door that just went around all day long. And she asked me some question, and I said to myself, like, oh my gosh, I've told you this like 10 times before. Why are you still asking this? But I told her. And then I said to myself later that night, because of course, everyone goes home at 5 o'clock and I'm still working. And I said, let me look at the system. Like, why isn't she using it? And I looked at it and I realized that it was out of date. It was no longer effective. And so when I started digging in, I was like, oh my gosh. And so I redid the system that night, met with her the next day and said, hey, this is the system to that answer that you were asking me, that problem. And she said, okay, great. And like a couple weeks later, I was like, wow, she hasn't asked me that question again. And it triggered something for me. So on the outside, it looked like I had all the boxes, right? I had systems, I had the team, I had everything that a successful business is supposed to have, but it was surface level. It wasn't the depth that I really needed in order to scale without those 80-hour weeks. So that's what I really dug into those next 2 years. And when I broke it down, it all comes down to 4 core pillars. And those are the 4 core pillars that I now teach women in business because not only did I use them to triple my $1 million business and get from 80 hours to 16, but when I looked at other big businesses, every single successful big business, big or small, utilizes them. And so I was like, this is the secret.
That's amazing. We're going to get to the pillars in a second, but I really think it's interesting how a lot of us look at a system and we do the sort of the entrepreneur level. Hey, yeah, that works. Let's go implement it, and we implement it at 10%, and then off we go to the next thing. Off we go to the next because our hero cape requires us to fly off to the next problem to solve in. And you said this really carefully. You said instead of it being an open door, it was a revolving door. And revolving door really means like people come in and they go out and they come right back in again because you're the solution, not them. People are the answer, aren't they? They're not the problem. People are the answer, but we're the problem if we don't give them the right tools to be able to do what they're doing. And that's a harder look, isn't it?
It truly is. And one of the other things that coach said to me during that session was that I was a teller. And I was like, okay, what does that mean? And he said, people have a question, and instead of referring to a system, they just come to you and you tell them what to do. So that's why your open door policy is a revolving door because it's like, question, you give the solution. Question, you give the answer. And so he said, unless you empower them with systems, they're going to constantly be coming to you and you're always going to remain the bottleneck and your business is never going to scale because you're out of time. And so I couldn't get any bigger without really digging in. And I love how you put like we have that cape. As busy, overworked, overwhelmed entrepreneurs, we're just looking to check something off our list. So we might get like halfway through the day. And so we don't ever really do anything 100%. We think we're like solving the problem, but again, it's really surface level. Oh, I wrote a system, but usually it's missing steps or we don't train the person on it or whatever it is.
Yeah, because that requires us to slow down and stay in one place,
Yes.
and that might be challenging for some people. Um, I also have this idea that you have to, people say seeing is believing, and we tend to, and it sounds like, one of the evolutions there was seeing is believing is, okay, when I see people rise up, I'll give them more to do. But the challenge with that is believing in them first is it gives you the opportunity to see what they can do. And believing in them means that you're teaching them how to do something, not telling them what to do. And that's a very powerful shift that you made. And it sounds like you made it relatively quickly. And you said you tripled the business as a result. So obviously there was something in it,
Yeah,
right?
and I mean, I've always been of the hiring mindset. I was probably more backwards as I trust and believe right from the beginning. Like, you applied for a job, you said you could do it, you told me you could. I hired you, you should be able to do it. And so where I failed as a leader back in the day is I wasn't a very good trainer. I had crappy systems and I wasn't a good trainer. And so I just figured they would show up, I would spend, a little bit of time with them and they would figure it out. So I was missing the two core pillars that every successful business needs in order for their support team to be able to do the job and meet their expectations and not be in their inbox or in their office all day, every day.
Yeah, unless and really, and I mean this really carefully because there's one woman I know. She was an educator in the public school system before building an e-school, and she came at training very naturally as a result of that. And she was a very good trainer as an entrepreneur all the way up, and that helped her dramatically scale her business. But not a lot of entrepreneurs come into entrepreneurship as good trainers. Come in as really good practitioners, as good doers, and part of it is understanding that the natural way that you find value, you create value through your effort, isn't the natural way of the world. We need to slow down and break that down into a process that we can share with our teams and teach our teams. And that doesn't make us that doesn't make us more vulnerable. It actually makes us much more resilient, doesn't it?
And back in the day, in the beginning of my entrepreneur journey, I was very lucky to be a part of the E Myth family and community, if you've ever read the book. And that's what basically their whole premise on is that someone in a job built a business and it's really just another job. And you have to step into that leadership role. And that's where you learn to lead. And one of those things is becoming a trainer, right? Being able to communicate your zone of genius to someone else. And not everyone can do it. I'm a much better trainer now, 18 years later. Thank gosh for tools and technology. And what I like to tell my clients is, the old way of having I got binders back in the day. Like, who even has binders anymore? But, nowadays you can train your team by literally doing the task yourself and just recording it while you're doing it and speaking out loud what you're doing and drop those into a Google folder and say, this is how you load events in our, community or whatever it is. So I think regardless of what level of trainer you are now, it's a required skill as a leader. And if you don't have it in you, then you need to hire someone who can do it. And that's what I did eventually. I hired a trainer from my business.
Yeah, that's important. And one of the things we have to remember is, back to the cape, right? It doesn't mean that we're any less of a superhero if we train other people in our zone of genius. In fact, my mom, in her infinite wisdom, would always say that you really want to learn something, you teach it to somebody else. And that's how you know you understand it. So it actually may enforce your superpower, it may reinforce it. And did you get better at it the more you started to train people and the more you started to pass it on?
I definitely got better as a trainer, but what I learned more was that everyone learned and digested information differently. There was a point in my business where we were signing up to be a beta tester of new software, and the franchisor asked us to watch how our staff was using a certain piece of technology. And so I sat down for an hour with everyone individually and I watched them work, and it blew my mind how everyone could do the same task in like 10 different ways. And so what I then realized was it maybe wasn't, I wasn't a horrible trainer. I just wasn't communicating the way that the person needed to receive the information. So that became part of the training program. Like, do you prefer to read? Like now I offer my clients videos or workbooks. If you like to read, great, read the workbook. If you like to listen and watch, then watch the video. Because I know that everyone digests information differently.
That's great. So in your napkin, you said go in all in on the 80% that actually matter. How did you discover the 80% that mattered to you? And you said it was hiding in plain sight. So what was the shift you made and how did you make it?
So in 2012, when I was in my second year of rebuilding that foundation, my neighboring franchise owner reached out to myself and another owner, and she said, let's get together and do like a quarterly planning meeting. And I was like, perfect. And so one of the things she had us do was dig into our referral sources in the community. So we were a home care agency and we received referrals from nursing homes, assisted livings, hospitals, etc. And I had about 1,000 people in my database. And when we dug into that information, there in plain sight that I did not realize for 5 years was that 80% of my revenue came from 20% of that list. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I am paying a full-time salesperson to go visit 1,000 people, and 200 of them approximately are funding 80% of our revenue. And so I was like, now what do I do with this information, right? Because when you talk about resilience and really what sets different people apart is when you have information like that, it's like, what do you do with it? Do you take it and run and make some scary big moves or don't you? Well, I decided to go all in on Pareto's principle, the 80-20 rule. And I had a meeting with my salesperson and I said, we're going to go from visiting those 1,000 people to just 200. And we both looked at each other like deer in the headlights, like, I hope this works. And it seemed like almost overnight, the revenue just started to grow because when we spent more time with those 200, we were getting to know them better. We knew their pain points, we knew their desires. We were being able to have longer meetings with them and build deeper relationships. And so we were better able to serve them. So they sent us more referrals. We weren't running around with with like our heads cut off like chickens. And we just started growing. And that was a big, bold, scary move because for 5 years I had visited those 1,000 people and now we were doing 200. But luckily, very quickly, we saw the positive results of that. And then we just kept running and kept fine tuning.
Yeah, and there's a narrative, right? Like, but I earned those 1,000 people. I worked hard for those 1,000 people, and do I just give 80% of them away? And the answer is yes.
Well, and
Because
it
you
was,
can't have the relationships, right? You have to build a relationship, and you built relationships after that.
yeah. And I felt like we had relationships with them. They just weren't very deep. But I was more concerned, like, what will they think? Like, we've been visiting them for 5 years and now we're not going to. Are they going to think? Because they were smaller referral sources, right? They weren't big players in our community. And so, I was like, are they thinking that they're no longer important? And so a lot of that was really getting over the mental challenge of in the mindset of what are they going to think and really saying like I have to do what's right for the business as a whole and not just because this is what we've always done.
And you got confirmation pretty quickly. You said overnight things seemed to improve right away.
It seriously was seemed overnight. I mean, within a couple months, our revenue just started going up because we were having better conversations. We were in buildings longer, in facilities longer. And so it'd be like, oh, like I have a referral for you right now. And it would be like, okay, great. So, yeah, it was really eye opening. And it also gave me confirmation in the importance of knowing your data and metrics in business, right? Prior to that, I had looked at my P&L and my balance sheet and I was like, great, like we're not broke, you know? Um, but now that I actually dug into the data and got those results, it kind of became a little addicting. I started digging into like everything in my business. And it opened up so many doors and it increased my profit margins, my revenue, my staff satisfaction, just everything across the board.
Yeah, you said really quickly, you went from like sort of surface level with clients, with everybody, to going deep. And that deep went past assumptions to knowing what's really going on behind your business. And that's really empowering as well. I mean, and you're able to really have real conversations with clients, partners, and most importantly, team members when you're dealing with real information as opposed to assumptions. Isn't that true?
That is so true. And, we talk about that, Superman kind of cape kind of deal. And we were so busy just trying to visit all those 1,000 people and trying to do everything that when we actually slowed down and focused on the ones that were moving the needle for us, we got to know them better as humans and not just referral partners. And that helped us in the community with credibility and opportunities so much more than just referrals. So, and I think it's the same thing with your staff. Instead of having those surface level conversations like, how are you today? I was like, so tell me what you did over the weekend, and actually sitting down and listening. Right. And not being like, are you done yet? Can we go? Can I go back to my office?
Yeah, that's really important. So let's talk about your 4 core pillars and how they got born out of all of this. How did that start?
So once the shift happened in 2012, I went from crying in the car in 2010 to being able to leave my business for 30 days in October of 2012 without it falling apart while I was gone. And I got back and I was like, okay, this is it. And I spent the next 5 years fine tuning it into truly a well oiled money making machine where I was working remotely between Massachusetts and Florida for 5 years. And I would come back and my team would be like, why are you here? We don't even need you. And I'd be like, okay, which was another mindset shift. But then women started asking me, how did you do it? How are you running a multi-million-dollar business remotely? How are you barely working? Then when I sold and moved to Florida, how did you do it? How have you had all this success? And so when I got into coaching in January of 21, I knew I needed to put together a framework. And so when I really dug in, I learned that those pillars were really the key to my success. And I knew what they were prior, but I hadn't defined them. So the first one is your structure. So this is 3 things. What do you want personally? Because that allows you to finally achieve success and get out of that hustle hamster wheel. What does your business stand for? Who do you service? What makes you unique? What do you stand for boldly in your industry? And then the third thing is, what is your signature offer or program, right? What do you do differently than anyone else? What makes you your unicorn? So when you have those 3 things together, clarity becomes so clear that there's no more if I could just figure out, like, where you're going. And then that sets us up for pillar 2, which is systems. This is everything from how you plan your day, week, month, quarter to client onboarding, offboarding, team member onboarding, offboarding. Every single thing in your business is systematized. That prepares us for pillar number 3, which is building a support team. In this day and age, you need to have everything that is outside of your zone of genius. So, what you love to do and what you're naturally good at, done by a human or a piece of technology. And so, in order for a team member to be successful, and this is where I had failed prior, is you have to have that clarity from pillar 1, structure, and then you have to have those systems for them to execute. So if you're in business right now and you've hired team members before, whether it's full-time, part-time, agencies, contractors, virtual assistants, and they haven't worked out, 90% of the time in my experience, it's not because of them. It's because you didn't have the infrastructure in place for them to succeed. So that's pillar 3. And then we wrap everything up with a nice bow in pillar 4, which is streamlining, utilizing technology, tools, and automations. That's how you maximize your profit margins, right? That's how you work less. That's how you give your team more flexibility because your business is running 24/7 without you being in it all of the time.
That's amazing. I wonder if you've noticed, or how many times you've noticed, that when you went to do your coaching practice, the first thing you did was go back to that word and build a system,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
That's interesting, right?
And
So
actually, the name of the system I call it is the legacy business system. So I even named it a system.
it's, yeah, you're not hiding from that fact. All right, that's really great. So w- you're also very deliberate. I've noticed that you've talked about uh, female women entrepreneurs are coming to you and asking for this freedom. Why is it that you feel that, is there a reason why women came to you? What do you think's behind that?
You know, here's what I know for a fact. After owning a senior home care franchise for 10 years and working with seniors at the end of their life, I can tell you firsthand that no one ever said to me, I wish I had worked more, right? They always express to me their regrets. I wish I had a better relationship with my spouse. I wish my kids were here caring for me instead of you. I wish I had taken that trip. I wish, I wish, I wish. And so a lot of my energy and vibe and what I put out to the world is about living your one epic life. And so many women see me living my life, and I aim to be an inspiration to get them to understand that, you get one shot at this, right? So go for it because we don't know when our day is our day. That they say to me, how did you do it? How are you doing it now? And how do I get to that point? And, I was on a call this morning with a future client and I said to her, what I teach is super, super simple and it's nothing you've probably never heard before, but it's the way I put it together and the support I give you that just makes it click for all of the women that come into my program. And they have the most amazing results because they have not only that framework, that system, but they also have the support and they have someone cheering them on saying, you got this. You're amazing. Let's do this. You get one life. This is what you want. So I think women are attracted to me for the freedom vibe and also because they see that I've done it and they wanna know how.
I really I appreciate that. But that's not what stuck out from what you said. What stuck out from what you said was you talked about how through your senior home care business and speaking to the people who were end of life, and everything that you went through, you heard a theme which you then aligned with. So I want to go back again. Why did you pick the senior home care business as being something you wanted to go into?
So, to back the bus up, one sunny Sunday in August 2006, I was sitting on my boyfriend's boat and the girl next to me said, "What do you wanna do?" And I said, "Start my own business." I think she meant for dinner or drinks later, but that's what came out. I walked into the office Monday morning and there was an email that said, "Have you ever thought of starting your own business?" And I was like, "Ah," like everything's aligning. And what it was a franchise consulting company. And I looked at everything from dog training, smoothie shops, sub shops, closet design, everything, and nothing really hit home. Until unfortunately, Thanksgiving that year, my boyfriend's father died at the early age of 57 unexpectedly. And it really woke me up. And the universe sent me another sign. The next week, a woman reached out to me who wanted to get in with the business that I was working for. And it was a senior home care franchise. And I said to her, "Is this a franchise?" And she said, "Yes." I researched 5 brands in the industry and signed on the line less than 30 days later. It was like the last day of 2006. And it changed the trajectory of my life. And so I really have had a life where I've seen people, pass earlier than they should have, people not living their life to the fullest. And so, I think when you're around that in your life, you really get an idea that, you do get one life and tomorrow is not guaranteed. And working with seniors and seeing that every day, if that's not a wake up call, then I don't know what is. So, that was big for me.
Yeah, I can tell that was really big for you, and I can relate to it. personally right now. I mean, we talked about this in the green room that just just yesterday we set my father-in-law free after a very long cancer journey that he was on, and painful journey, and it was painful for the family and painful for my wife. And there is a different vibe in these palliative centers, in these end of life environments. And it's almost impossible to describe to someone unless you've been there, but it's beautiful and tragic all at the same time. And it's confusing also. So to have spent so much time there and then to carry that forward in such a powerful way, to say that, you're helping other people live their life to the fullest. I think that's really empowering because what I saw a lot of, and I wonder what you feel about it, but medical science has gotten to the place where we can, keep people from dying for a long time, but we can't help people with living. That's something they have to do for themselves. And you're smiling like this knowing smile because I believe you've got a lot of wisdom in that and a lot of experience with that. And that's something that I'm recently aware of. Um, and how big of an impact is that in your life, in your day to day? I'm sure it's something you keep with you every day, isn't it?
It truly is. And, all those years that I hustled those crazy hours and, ate crap food and worked long hours and didn't take care of my health, it caught up with me a couple years ago. About 3 years ago, I had my own health experience. I thought I was having a heart attack. It turned out to be acid reflux, and the medical system wanted to put a band aid on it. And due to losing my dad at a young age, he was 74, I was not happy with the, solution that they gave me. And so that I've spent the last 3 years working on how I truly live my life and fixing all of the things that I did to my body during those years when I was building my first business. Unfortunately, what I see is so many entrepreneurs don't quote unquote wake up until something tragic happens. So, in their personal health, family health, a death, or something like that. And then it's like all of a sudden, it's like I have to change something. But at that point, sometimes things are so emotional, so, driven. They've built this beast of a business that it's really hard to make change really quickly. And so, I feel it's part of my job here in order to share my story. I talked about my gut health journey for the past 3 years on social media because I want women to know like what the decisions you're making today in your business, like those late nights working till 11, 12, 2 a.m., they're going to show up for you sometime in the future. That baseball game that you missed of your kid, right? Like those kinds of things are going to have an effect. You might not see them right away, but instead of missing things now, let's just rebuild your business foundation now. And now I can do it with women in 90 days and really help them understand that they have this opportunity to live their epic life and have a dream business at the same time.
That's really amazing, because late nights show up, right? They have a way of showing up, but so does a light heart, so does fun, so does joy. Doesn't that also have a way of showing up too?
Yeah. And I mean, I call myself the fun business coach for a reason. And it's truly because I think business should be fun. If it's not fun anymore, then why are you doing it? You might as well go get a job where you're guaranteed a paycheck. Um, but I really think that I wrote a newsletter article a couple weeks ago about that we're really in a fun recession. So many of the women that I talk to are just not having fun anymore in their life. And we're at a point where we need to do something about that because if we don't change, it's just going to keep going. Like you have to have your own draw a line in the sand moment and say something has to change because why wouldn't you? You get one shot at this. So why not live your best life, right? It doesn't have to be big and flashy. It can be simple, but it should be the best life that you ever dreamed possible.
And And this is available to everybody, right? Like, let's be clear about this. And I fundamentally believe this. Again, believing is seeing, not seeing is believing, and we have to believe it before we can see it. And we have to believe that we can have fun. We can enjoy ourselves. We don't need to make things hard. And hustle culture is so fake. It's so unbelievably fake and so put on and so Instagram surface level. The the real truth of it is being who you really are, like working from your heart is more durable than anywhere else. And having fun with it and connecting with people is really important too. What's somebody out there right now is overwhelmed. They're listening to the spring in your step and the joy with which you share, and you can see the pink everywhere, and they're like, okay, Sailynn, that's nice for you to say. Living in Florida, you sold your big business, now you're coaching people. Great, you've got a magic wand. I don't have a magic wand. What do I do first?
So I think the big thing is to keep it simple. Block out some time, whatever that is. Maybe it's early in the morning, maybe it's when you're eating your lunch, whenever it is, and write down what you truly want out of life. Toyota came up with the 5 whys theory, which is when they had a problem on the Toyota floor building vehicles, they wanted to get to the root cause of what was going on. And so this is one of the first things that I have my clients do is I want you to tell me what you truly want out of life. I learned that lesson the hard way. I said time and money. Well, how much time? How much money? So I just kept chasing something. And so I really force my clients to get deep. Like, if they say they want $100,000 salary, I'm like, what are you going to do with it? Like, lay it out for me right now. Because when you get clear on what you want, and then you take 5 minutes every single morning and you read that, it allows you to make quicker decisions, right? It allows you to stay more aligned. It allows you to say no without guilt, right? All of these different things. And so, really, the easiest first step is just to journal. What do you want? And if you need a journal prompt, write out your ideal day and start with I wake up. So mine says, I wake up when I'm fully rested without an alarm, because that was my dream back in the day after being on call 24/7. And so keep it simple and then read that every single morning for 5 minutes. And throughout your day, as you make decisions, ask yourself, does this decision align with what I truly want? And it will change the way that you think and you live.
Uh, Love it. One of the things I say often is focusing on what you want is truly the differentiator between people who achieve and those who don't. Because if you're not focused on what you want, you get what's there instead. And then this journaling it every day, writing about it every day brings it alive. There's a great doctor, his name's Jim Lair, and he did human performance labs, and you can change your story. You just have to rewrite it, and you rewrite it by taking the pen and rewriting it. Um, Sailynn, this was really powerful and wonderful. I want to thank you for being here. This is a part of the conversation each week where we ask our guest to pay forward some appreciation. This comes from a great napkin we received 11 years ago. What you appreciate appreciates. The idea was from John Rulin, who shared it with us, is that if you appreciate someone, they appreciate and value to themselves, to the community, and to you over time. So he started a movement of gratitude. He created a company that made a big impact around the world. And suddenly he was taken too quickly from us last year. And since that day, we've been paying forward that gift and asking everyone who comes on the show to appreciate somebody. Who would you like to shout out today?
So, in relation to my paper napkin wisdom, I would like to shout out Debbie Nichols. So, she was my neighboring franchise owner for 10 years, and she's back in Massachusetts. And she was the mentor that I never asked for, but that gave me the world for 10 years. She shared everything with me. She was 2 years ahead of me in business, so she had just that little bit of edge, but she was so smart and she taught me so many lessons that I never learned from the franchisor, but I learned from Debbie. So forever grateful for her. She truly changed my entrepreneur journey those 10 years.
That's amazing and powerful. Thank you for sharing, Sailynn. Thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me.
What a powerful conversation. As you listened to Sailynn Doyle today, you may have noticed moments where something in her journey resonated with you, maybe a sense of recognition or even relief. Maybe you began wondering where in your own business or leadership you've been working harder than you need to, and where a small shift in focus could unlock something much larger. It's fascinating how clarity arrives disguised as something simple, and how the thing we most need to see has a way of hiding right in front of us until someone says a sentence, tells a story, or shares a moment that makes everything reorganize. Sailynn did that for us today. Before you move on with your day, take a moment and let the ideas settle. There may be one relationship, one metric, one pattern, or one decision that quietly surfaced to you. Maybe it came to you just now. You might even find yourself already knowing the next step, even if you're not fully aware of it yet. And if today opened a question for you, stay with it. Often, the question is the beginning of that transformation. If this episode brought value to you, share it with someone who's been carrying too much for too long. Someone who might need to remember that focus can be freeing. And if you haven't already, join us by subscribing, leaving a review, and becoming a part of the community of leaders who believe that wisdom can fit on a napkin and still change everything. And until next time, remember, sometimes growth doesn't come from adding more. Sometimes it comes from finally seeing what was there all along. Keep noticing, keep leading, and keep turning small ideas into big results. And make it a great day.